So, welcome to today's edition of Resilience Talk. We are going to be focusing on NATO stability policing role in resilience. It's going to be a special edition since we are not in Romania. As you can see in the background, we are being hosted by our close friends, and we are so happy to be here and have this discussion. I think we should start with our distinguished guest, but at the same time our host, Colonel de Magistris. Please, could you tell us something more into what stability policing is, how it works, what's your vision, what's your strategic perspective?
Mulțumesc mult, first and foremost. Thank you so much for being here and just for the great conversation we had today. Stability policing in a nutshell is just bringing the police dimension into military operations. So it's a function which is discharged in operations in fragile states. So it's not a function discharged in our own countries. So the prerequisite is that we have to deploy police-like assets in fragile state, in sovereign country which renounce to their sovereignty, which ask for the support of the alliance also on the law enforcement remit. So this is in a nutshell what is stability policing. Just discharging law enforcement duties in a destabilized environment in a robust fashion, because a destabilized environment requires a more structured approach, a more robust approach also in law enforcement.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Probably there will be more in detailed contributions for you as we go on. But at the same time, I would like to give the floor to our president, Mr. Ovidiu Raetchi, please.
Thank you so much. And I would like to start by thanking our host here in Vicenza. It was a great pleasure and surprise to discover the work you've done here. I think as also a manager of a center of expertise, working with NATO, with the EU, I really admire the way your center is organized. I really admire your organization and your products. And I'm sure that including this dialogue, the resilience talk, that I hope will have some success and bring some echoes from Romania. We will start a dialogue which will focus step by step on common ground, on common interest. And I'm thinking that societal resilience and ways of building bridges between the authority, the state, and the societies, especially in areas where the state had failed, had collapsed. These are domains that we will work on, and we will give our partners in NATO, in EU, in Romania, in Italy, products that will be useful.
Indeed, we are far stronger together rather than working as silos. So I do praise what you said, Mr. President. Thank you so much again for visiting us. And, you know, we go by definition in the military, but it's very useful because talking about policing in a destabilized environment is not just policing a war-torn country. It's an awful lot of activities that must be dealt with in order to ensure interoperability, coordination with the military instrument of power. However, current threats are not only those relevant to the military and to the law enforcement. We know that all the instruments of power are involved, talking from diplomatic, information, military, economic, financial, intelligence, but also law enforcement. So what I mean here to stress is that the role of law enforcement cannot be underestimated across all spectrum of operations. This is why it's crucial to have, and this is why also stability policing function can be discharged across the whole operational continuum in NATO operation, before, during, and after a conflict. And if I may, the lesson learned branch head of the center, Dorin Luta, from Romania, if I'm not mistaken, can add something about it.
Of course, we are pleased that you could join us in this session, and I would like to give you the floor. Last but not least, Colonel Luta, please.
Thank you, Carola. Good day to everybody. So I'm Dorin Luta. I'm a colonel from the Romanian Gendarmerie, and I'm also the senior national representative of our country to the Center of Excellence. I work as lessons learned branch head, and I'm very proud to represent my country, which through the Ministry of Interior Affairs, it's one of the 9 countries, we call it sponsoring nations, that are actively engaged in the center. And because of we speak about stability policing, every time in NATO we are looking into an activity using the challenges that are happening because of some military actions, but we believe it's also beneficial for the entire alliance to have a look on the whole of society, also on the civilian population, and for that police is one of the forces that are in touch with the local population every day. And I'm happy I'm wearing the blue uniform today because one of our motto is to try to bring this green lens in which NATO looks to an operation, also putting a blue one instead and trying to see what are the benefits of using the police element within their activities.
Thank you very much. So let's jump right into it. How can stability policing actually contribute to resilience?
So NATO has been talking about resilience since its foundation, 1949. Article 3 of the NATO Treaty deals with about resilience. The first line of defense in resilience is law enforcement because it ensures continuity of government. So it ensures that all the institutions work. It ensures that the institutions are legitimate, they work under the rule of law, which is a sort of stall comprised of 3 different legs: cops, the police, courts, the judiciary, and the corrections, the prison system. They must be addressed simultaneously. And it's instrumental to ensure the rule of law. One of the aims of stability policing is upholding the rule of law, another one is upholding human rights, the protection of civilians. These are the main aims of stability policing when we deploy boots on the ground in fragile states. And by focusing on the local population, we ensure that the needs of the local population are addressed up front, whilst the military, through their green lens, look at the enemy. We look at the needs of the population. We fulfill their needs. So filling a capacity gap that otherwise will be filled by somebody else. Take an example, unfortunate example in Afghanistan. Do you know that the most hated institution in Afghanistan were the police? Do you know that the Taliban filled this needs gap themselves and were welcomed by the saviors, no? Who are not. They are not the custodians of virtual values. Still, the institutions were so corrupted that the population preferred to turn to them. Stability policing is proposing itself as one of the solutions to avoid this happens, to build also the legitimacy of the law enforcement in any fragile state. However, when these law enforcement agencies do not work properly in the beginning, imagine after a man-made disaster or a tsunami, after an earthquake, the police do not exist anymore, may not exist anymore, after a war which wipes away everything. Who is going to fill this gap? Who is going to do these duties? Stability policing, with a mandate from the Security Council resolution of the United Nations, can do so under NATO aegis, if we are deployed under NATO aegis. Still, bringing the police dimension into military environment is not only something which is relevant to NATO, also United Nations and the European Union and African Union can do it. What is crucial to note, however, that everything started within NATO in 1998 in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the first deployment of a multinational specialized unit. The forefather of stability policing dates back to the 6th August 1998. So these are success stories which has been going on for numerous years. It worked very well also in Albania, and then it worked very well also in Kosovo, still under NATO aegis, and then also in Iraq, not anymore under NATO aegis, but it was very successful. Just we were focusing on the needs of the population in a war-torn country. But it applies also whenever there is a natural disaster. So when we say the first line of defense is stability policing in resilience, we have to keep in mind that resilience is crucial also in the main core task of the alliance, defense and deterrence. So I would say that it nestles any efforts of run by stability policing asset nestle with all the society approach, but also with the efforts of the military instrument power. As I mentioned before, whilst the military, the pure military, focus on the enemy, we focus on the spoilers of the peace process. We focus on those who undermine the peace process, also the end state of the mission when we deploy. This is crucial to know because otherwise we may run the risk to leave the floor to these spoilers of the peace process that can undermine since the foundation the NATO mission.
Since you're talking about the populations and the needs that they have, and you are actually going forward towards them, there's also a battle for the hearts and minds, a battle
for
the
narratives.
Narratives in the end. How do you tackle this subject? How do you perceive it, and what are your instruments towards it?
First and foremost, by focusing on the local population, we focus on their needs. This is also human security. We must protect the values which are underpinned by also the NATO treaty. So NATO treaty underpins several values which are relevant to human security. By focusing on the local population, we mean that we want to focus on their primary needs. We want to avoid them being exploited by the situation, by those actors, by those spoilers I was mentioning before. Community-oriented policing is a very, very difficult task to be carried out. This is one of the main tasks that stability policing can discharge when deployed in any theater of operation. It seems to be, the cop on the beat seems to be just a cop task, something that is to be done by walking a village. Yes, sometimes also we need to walk a village. We need, however, to listen people. When we meet people, when we need, when we interact with them, we gather intelligence. This intelligence drives information, drives investigation, drives police operation, crackdowns. But however, when we talk with people, we remove any kind of shield. If we are wearing sunglasses, we remove the sunglasses. We establish a contact with them, and we support the population, listen to them, looking them into their eyes, and try to understand which are their needs. Do you say, what about the stratum? Yes, we foster stratum from the scratches. We start there. And if we deliver for years, unfortunately it takes years, always a good message on the ground, there is no fake news that can jeopardize our day-to-day job.
So you become their actual partner in everything that you're doing and towards what you're building together with the population.
Indeed, you are hitting the nail on the head, because this is really the aim of any police force. Bridging or building the trust with the local population. Only by doing so you will avoid this enclave or crime, for instance, or the spite of violence Only by talking to population, establishing trust, working hand to hand with them, with the society, and with the cop on the beat, walking the village, walking the cities, and talking to the population. This community-oriented policing, and people say, oh, but you do not fight mafia like this. You do fight mafia doing like this. And in Italy, I'm Italian, and I've been in the law enforcement industry forever. It works very well. When you enter the schools, you speak to the students, you win their hearts and mind. There is no social media, there is no app which beat your direct talking, you're looking into the eyes of the people and giving your point of view and your example, leading by example. This is community policing, oriented policing.
So it's one-on-one direct contact.
Indeed.
To establish a solid partnership. Indeed,
and still, stability policing assets can perform the broad range of police activities. So community-oriented policing is something, it is one of the top tier stability policing tasks. But our task in any destabilized environment range from the basic one, crowd riot control operation, critical site security, to those who are a little bit more complicated, detention operations of arresting people or criminal investigation. But then when it raises to those more police-oriented, stability policing are really high-end stability policing as high-end units which can carry out any kind of forensic investigation, counter-corruption, organized crime, terrorism, criminal analysis, which is not a piece of cake to be carried out. So these are the broad range of activity that any kind of police force can perform back in their country. When it comes to stability policing as a function, which are the actors? The main first logical choice, according to the NATO doctrine, are the so-called gendarmerie type forces, that are police forces with military status, organization, training, equipment, expressing civil law enforcement duties back in their countries. However, stability policing as a function can be performed also with the support of the military police, those who focus on the military force, who usually conduct combat support operations. I'm talking about mobility support, detention operation for the prisoner of war, for protection, and also policing the force, the discipline. So they can provide support. But also other units, if they have training, equipment, I'm talking about infantry, for instance, crowd riot control operation can be conducted also by infantry units, provided that they have training and equipment. But if you go to mediation, so talking to a crowd, no, you need somebody who helps you to do so very well in a trained fashion. To be a good mediator, you need to undergo, in my institution, for instance, a 1-year training. And if you do not pass the exam, you will not be a mediator, a negotiator. So there is a huge set of tasks. So this club is so open that in a benign environment, we can accept also trainers, for instance, from the civil society, retired cops from civil police. So there is room for everybody, because we need to express a capability which can be performed for a pretty long period. Think about the current mission in Kosovo, which has been there since 1999, so 24 years. We need this to be sustainable, this effort, across the whole operational continuum, as I said, during, before, during, and after the conflict.
And I think here our colleague could contribute, because lessons learned start in the past. They teach us a valuable experience, and they show us ways towards the future. Can you please elaborate?
Yes, it will be my pleasure, and I will start elaborating using an example to understand better what we speak about. In Afghanistan, the NATO was present for 20 years, and there was an important pillar aimed at properly reforming the Afghan police. This was done using both police but also non-police elements. And in the end, the result was the fact that the police in Afghanistan was built using a model that will best fit the non-police approach, if I may say, because the reality showed that the Afghan police in the end looked in the eyes of the local population as a force that was there to accomplish a task which was not aimed at being close to the population. They received more training in the field of fighting terrorism and combating insurgency, that this put the police outside of the cities, not helping the society, not helping the local population, which in the end left a vacuum which was filled by the Taliban. So this was the approach that led to a society that was not resilient when it comes to change. And this is something that should not happen. We discovered this by using the lessons learned process while analyzing at the end of the activity what was done in Afghanistan. So, how to better perform our activities in the future, has as fundament the lessons learned from the ground. They are there, and we are here to analyze it and to show to everybody without putting any finger, without giving any blame, just to show that things can be done better if we understand the situation from the beginning and if we are really looking into the specifics of the crisis. We mentioned about the importance of being actively engaged in a conflict, but also NATO has other two core tasks, lines of effort, which are not directly linked to a conflict, but they help sometimes avoid, but if not mitigate the conflict. And this is crisis management, prevention, and then it's the big framework of cooperative security. A society is resilient when a crisis occurs because it has proper training when the crisis is not there. And this is what we as policemen try to do while helping states, failed states, developing proper skills when the situation allows us, in order that their institutions are able to face the threat, which can be man-made, natural-made, or caused by the conflict.
Thank you very much for your inputs, both of you. It's a very wide and interesting domain, and I think our president has several questions that he wants to ask. I can feel it.
What I would like to add, put in discussion without contradicting our distinguished host, is that from my point of view, or from the societal resilience point of view, the first line of defense is rather the belief of the citizens in the system of value that they are willing to defend, that unites them. And this is the case for Ukraine, for example. Ukraine maybe showed this huge resilience and resistance because people are willing to fight, are willing even to die for their project. Country, Ukraine, without any negotiation on this idea. On the other side, the errors in Afghanistan appeared maybe because the values that the people were ready to fight for were misunderstood at some point, or it was difficult to find the way that the authorities and the citizen viewed those values. And I was thinking about the connection between the military force and the civilians' belief in values, referring to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was in 89, 91, the second military power in the world, maybe from some point of view the first military power in the world, but it still collapsed with all these military force. Why? Because the citizens didn't believe in the project they were offered. So I think that's where the construction of even a state begins, and this is where you enter the scene, the moment that nobody believes anymore in the authority because the authority just collapsed.
May I be mischievous, provocative? Who was the first person that you met after disembarking your plane yesterday in Venezia airport? Who was it? a man or a lady, for sure, you show the passport to somebody, didn't you?
I think we must talk about Rome because we
Okay.
arrived
So
with a train.
but you landed in Rome. So
Yes.
you show your passport to somebody.
Exactly.
Who was the person on the other side?
Person in uniform.
So it was a police officer, a policewoman. So who is the first business card of the state? The law enforcement. So if the law enforcement is not reliable, the state is not reliable, because we are the first image of the state. So an authoritarian state hinges on an authoritarian police. But if the police are the expression of the state, this doesn't mean that they have to disregard human rights. This is our aim. In the Second World War, after the collapse of several states, I can give you a couple of examples, but I can talk about my organization, the Carabinieri. We are still the well-esteemed, the Benemerita, we are called here, because we deserve it on the ground. We are those who arrested Pinocchio. Why? Because Collodi, the writer of Pinocchio, chose the Carabinieri to arrest Pinocchio because they are the epitome of justice. Somewhere in some regions in Italy, we are called the justice, not the Carabinieri, which means that they think that we discharge justice, not police duties, because we make mistakes, but it seems that they think that we are the expression of the state, a righteous state. So when you talk about first line of defense, I don't concur with you. Yes, the population is crucial, but if the law enforcement are not reliable, for sure I give an alibi to the population to say, okay, I will misbehave. The trust in the country is crucial, but the police the law enforcement are really instrumental to build this trust, to build also the integrity of the institutions. Rand Corporation carried out a study which we know very well. After the second, because of a cooperation with the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, an auditing body of the US Congress. This study shows how half of the conflict after the Second World War revolved to conflict within 5 years. These were ethnic-oriented conflicts. Half of this half revolved to war within 1 year. Afghanistan in 9 days. And what happened in Afghanistan? The police disappeared. The military were still fighting, the police disappeared. And the city were taken over just by passing by or contracting with the wheeling and dealing in front of the gates of the doors of the city between the Taliban and the local chieftain, not the local politician. I would say local chieftain is better. What about the law enforcement? They were not supposed to fight. They were supposed to reassure the local population. And this is the point. And now this is Afghanistan.
Thank you very much. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I would ask the Romanian mediation on this issue. Which is the first line of defense? Is it law enforcement? Is it the citizens, the belief of the citizen in the project, the state project, or maybe it's a way of mixing both of them?
It's true. I do believe that all of these elements are interconnected without necessarily mentioning one of them as being the first line. All of them together contribute of being the line of defense of the society. We mentioned we are law enforcement, we are police, or in our slang we are cops, one of the 3 C's. Even if we do our job as best as we can, without the entire process working smoothly, meaning cops, courts, and corrections. So without having the necessary justice system to bring the criminals to justice, then they will still be on the streets. And if we do not put them, in the correction process after being found guilty, they will not become regular persons, even after tens and tens of years. So we are important, yes, but we must play our part together with the other entities in the society. Why we are more important than the others is because we are the one that speak, interact every day with a population. If I may put the problem in another way, it's true. We represent the trust of the country. If we act well, yeah, we help the population gain trust in the country. But the opposite is maybe twice as valid. Population can lose trust in its institutions because the police is not efficient. And Afghanistan is exactly this case.
The rule of law in Afghanistan was not one of the priority. This is the big point. And I mean, we are bringing about this example not only because we have a vested interest on it, but because it's a case study. So rule of law is crucial. Law enforcement is instrumental. We are not the prima donna. We can contribute, but if the lack of trust in the institution, the lack of trust in the institution jeopardizing the entire narrative, because having corrupted officials means to have corrupted politicians. How can you trust them? By the same token, if we go back to the history, we know that an awful lot of high-level officials clearly state the priority is the rule of law. Then talk about politics, building a country, whatever. You must ensure the rule of law. Otherwise, going back to Afghanistan, let me be a little bit derogatory with due respect. Those poor people who were casting their votes and using the fingerprints with the ink had their hand chopped. They were mutilated only because they voted and they found the ink traces on their fingers. How can you demand people exercise a right, voting, a very basic right, if they are not protected and they get their hands chopped because just they exercise a right? So is it democracy? No, this is the violence dictatorship. Who is going to prevent it? We have the example of the tank chasing a rubber. No, the police is to utilize its means to prevent such crimes and to contribute to ensure the rule of law, because this is crucial from our perspective, but the whole of society approach means that all these issues are to be approached simultaneously. But we believe that we can be part of the solution.
Thank you. And now, at the end, I want a small exercise. I want 5 words to describe what you are doing, just in 5 words. What would those 5 words be for both of you?
To describe stability policing?
Exactly, and the whole aspect of it. What would those 5 words be?
I have 3.
No, I mean, whoever.
You can say one at a time. Let's see if some of them will overlap.
Okay, so you need a single word or a statement? So
Words. 5 words.
Justice?
Community.
I will write them down.
Okay, justice.
And I want them to be at the end of our show, written in the low part. Justice, community.
Defense of the fragile people. So how can I can summarize in only one word? No, because we
Protecting.
protection. Yes, protecting. Trustworthy. Integrity. Now I keep going on, so but now I get.
Now it starts even better.
The word map. I'm warming up. So it means 10 in total because we have to share it.
You started a bit hard, but I think now you could find 20 at least.
Yeah, indeed.
And for our last word, please, Mr. President.
I was thinking in panic that what I will say if you will ask me. I discover some potential way to get out of it because resilience, I think it is fragile ideals that are defensed with strong muscles if needed. But what I would rather do at the end is raise some expectations, not only in Romania, but also at the Euro-Atlantic level for our partners, even in the center of excellence throughout the Euro-Atlantic world, that we will find ways to work on some concepts that you are already working and we are working, like positive stratcom, positive narrative, and that at some point we will be able to share those products that we would be honored to work with you together. This would be my final word, if I may.
Yeah, okay. May I just...
Of course.
You know, according to the NATO treaty, resilience is the capability to resist to an armed attack. However, the current situation demands this concept evolving a little bit, because now there is no NATO opponents, competitors, enemies. If we look at the NATO strategic concept, look at the allies are targets. And they target us by weaponizing all the instruments of power, which I mentioned before. So the capacity to resist to such attacks become resilience. And I'm very happy to know that now you have been involved in the development of the layer resilient concept, where also NATO stability policing is mentioned, because we are really an active partner of the NATO Allied Command for Transformation, especially in the development of the NATO warfighting capstone concept. And the layer resilience is one of the warfighting development imperatives, which paves the way for such a resistance. We must be resilient to resist to any kind of attack. Hinging on human rights, the protection of civilians, the rule of law is our job. Protecting people is our job back in our countries. The same applies if NATO, the alliance, requires us to deploy wherever there is a need to protect the civil population. This is our right, our duty, and this is what we are committed to do. So thank you so much for this great golden opportunity for us to spread our message. Thank you. Mulțumesc mult.
Thank you as well. Grazie mille per essere stati qui con noi. And this is a small token in Italian.
No, thank you so much.
And thank you for having us. Stay tuned to our next edition. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you. Mulțumesc mult to the Romanian audience. Goodbye, everyone.